ॐ भूर्भुवस्सुः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaskar, my dear friends. This is video number 44 on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna Parmahamsa. This video starts with chapter number 39, Worldly Man's Charity. Master, what do you mean that one must first save money and then seek God? And you talk about charity and kindness. A worldly man spends thousands of rupees for his daughter's marriage, yet all the while his neighbors are dying of starvation and he finds it hard to give them 2 morsels of rice. He calculates 1,000 times before giving them even that much. The people around him have nothing to eat, but what does he care about that? He says to himself, what can I do? Let the rascals live or die. All I care about is that the members of my family should live well, and they talk about doing good to others. Trilokya. But sir, there are good people in the world as well. Take the case of Pundarika Vidyanidhi, the devotee of Chaitanya. He lived in the world. Master, he had drunk wine up to his neck. If he had drunk a little more, he could not have led a worldly life. Trailokya remained silent and said aside to Greece, then what he has written is not true. Greece to Trailokya, then what you have written is not true. Trailokya, why so? Doesn't he, meaning Sri Ramakrishna, admit that a man can lead a spiritual life in the world? Master, yes, he can, but such a man should first of all attain knowledge and then live in the world. First he should realize God, then he can swim in a sea of splendor and not be stained. After realizing God, a man can live in the world like a mudfish. The world he lives in after attaining God is the world of Vidya. In it he sees neither woman nor gold. He finds there only devotion, devotee and God. You see, I too have a wife and a few pots and pans in my room. I too feed a few vagabonds. I too worry about the devotees, Habib's mother, for instance, when they come here. A devotee to Trilokya. I have read in your book that you do not believe in the incarnation of God. You said so in connection with Chaitanya, Trilokya. Why? Chaitanya himself protested against the idea of divine incarnation. Once in Puri, Advaita and the other devotees sang a song to the effect that Chaitanya was God. At this, Chaitanya shut the door of his room. Infinite are the glories of God. As he, meaning Sri Ramakrishna, says, the devotee is the parlor of God. Suppose a parlor is very well furnished. Does that mean that the master of the house has exhausted all his power and splendor in that one parlor? Grace, he, meaning Sri Ramakrishna, says that prema alone is the essence of God. We need the man through whom this ecstatic love of God flows. He says that the milk of the cow flows through the udder. We need the udder. We do not care for the other parts of the cow, the legs, tail, or horns. Talokya, the milk of God prema flows through an infinite number of channels. God has infinite powers. Greece, but what other power can stand before prema? Talokya, it is possible if he who has the power wants it. Everything is in God's power. Greece, yes, I admit that, but there is also a thing called the power of avidya. Taralokya, is avidya a thing? Does there exist a substance called avidya? It is only a negation, as darkness is the negation of light. There is no doubt that we prize prema most. What is a drop of to God is an ocean to us. But if you say that prema is the last word about God, then you limit God Himself. Master to Terlokya and the other devotees. Yes, yes, that is true. But an ounce of wine makes me drunk. What need have I to count the gallons of wine in the tavern? What need have we to know about the infinite powers of God? Girish to Trilokya. Do you believe in the incarnation of God? Trilokya. God incarnates himself through his devotees alone. There cannot be a manifestation of infinite powers. It simply is not possible. It is impossible for any man to manifest infinite powers. Grace, you can serve your children as Brahmagopala. Then why is not it possible to worship a great soul as God? Master to Triloka. Why all this bother about infinity? I If I want to touch you, must I touch your entire body? If you want to bathe in the Ganges, must you touch the whole river from Haridwar down to the ocean? All troubles come to an end when the ego dies. As long as a trace of I consciousness remains, one is conscious of difference. Nobody knows what remains after the I disappears. Nobody can express it in words. That which is remains after the I disappears, one cannot say that a part manifests through this man and the rest through another. Satchitananda is the ocean. The port of I is immersed in it. As long as the port exists, the water seems to be divided into two parts. One part inside the pot and the other part outside it. But when the pot is broken, there is only one stretch of water. One cannot even say that. Who would say that? After the discussion, Sri Ramakrishna became engaged in pleasant conversation with Trilokya. Master, you are happy, is not that so? Trilokya, but I shall become my old self again as soon as I leave this place. Here I feel very much the awakening of spiritual consciousness. Master, you don't have to be afraid of walking on thorns if you are wearing shoes. You need not be afraid of women and gold if you know that God alone is real and all else illusory. It was about 9 o'clock in the evening. Balram took Trilokya to another room and gave him refreshments. Sri Ramakrishna began to tell the devotees about Trilokya and people of his views. Master to Greece and the other devotees. Do you know what these people are like? They are like a frog living in a well who has never seen the outside world. He knows only his well, and so he will not believe that there is such a thing as the world. Likewise, people talk so much about the world because they have not known the joy or God. To Greece, why do you argue with them so much? They busy themselves with both the world and God. One cannot understand the joy of God unless one has tasted it. Can anybody explain sex pleasure to a 5-year old boy? Worldly people talk about God only from hearsay. Children hearing their old aunts quarreling among themselves learn to say, "There is my God, I swear by God." But that doesn't matter. I don't blame such people. Can all comprehend the indivisible Satchitananda? Only 12 rishis could recognize Ramachandra. All cannot recognize an incarnation of God. Some take him for an ordinary man, some for a holy person, and only a few recognize him as an incarnation. One offers a price for an article according to one's capital. A rich man said to his servant, "Take this diamond to the market and let me know how different people price it. Take it first of all to the eggplant seller." The servant took the diamond to the eggplant seller. He examined it, turning it over in the palm of his hand, and said, "Brother, I can give 9 shares of eggplants for it." "Friend," said the servant, "a little more, say 10 shares." The eggplant seller replied, "No, I have already quoted above the market price. You may give it to me if that price suits you." The servant laughed. He went back to his master and said, "Sir, he would give me only 9 shares of eggplants and not one more. He said he had offered more than the market price." The master smiled and said, "Now take it to the cloth dealer. The other man deals only in eggplants. What does he know about a diamond? The cloth dealer has a little more capital. Let us see how much he offers for it." The servant went to the cloth dealer and said, "Will you buy this? How much will you pay for it?" The merchant said, "Yes, it is a good thing. I can make a nice ornament out of it. I will give you 900 rupees for it." "Brother," said the servant, "offer a little more and I will sell it to you. Give me at least 1,000 rupees." The cloth dealer said, "Friend, don't press me for more. I have offered more than the market price. I cannot give a rupee more. Suit yourself." Laughed the servant, returned to his master and said, "He won't give a rupee more than 900. He too said he had quoted above the market price." The master said with a laugh, "Now take it to a jeweler. Let us see what he has to say." The servant went to a jeweler. The jeweler glanced at the diamond and said at once, I will give you 100,000 rupees for it. They talk of practicing religion in the world. Suppose a man is shut up in a room. All the doors and windows are closed. Only a little light comes through a hole in the ceiling. Can he save the sun with that roof over his head? And what will he do with only one ray of light? Woman and gold is the roof. Can he see the sun unless he removes the roof? Worldly people are shut up in a room, as it were. Discussion about divine incarnation. The incarnations of God belong to the class of the Iswarakotis. They roam about in the open spaces. They are never imprisoned in the world, never entangled by it. Their ego is not the thick ego of worldly people. The ego, the I consciousness of worldly people is like four walls and a roof. The man inside them cannot see anything outside. The ego of the incarnations and other Iswarakotis is a thin ego. Through it, they have an uninterrupted vision of God. Take the case of one man who stands by a wall on both sides of which there are meadows stretched to infinity. If there is a hole in the wall, through it can see everything in the other side. If the hole If there is a hole in the wall, through it can see everything on the other side. If the hole is a big one, he can even pass through it. The ego of the incarnations and other Iswarakotis is like the wall with a hole. Though they remain on the side of the wall, still they can see the endless meadow on the other side. What is to say? Though they have a human body, they are always united with God. Again, if they will, they can pass through the big hole to the other side. And remain in samadhi. And if the hole is big enough, they can go through it and come back again. That is to say, though established in samadhi, they can again descend to the worldly plane. The devotees listened breathlessly to these words about the mystery of divine incarnations. Chapter number 40. The Master at the houses of Balram and Greece. Master and M. About 1 o'clock in the afternoon, M arrived at Balram's house in Calcutta and found the master asleep in the drawing room. One or two devotees resting near him. M began to fan the master gently. A few minutes later, Sri Ramakrishna woke up and sat on the bed with his clothes in a rather untidy condition. M saluted him and took the dust off his feet. Master tenderly to M. Are you well? I am feeling rather uneasy. I have a sore in my throat. I suffer very much during the early hours of the morning. Can you tell me how I may be cured? In a worried tone, they served pickled mango with the meal. I ate a little of it. How is your wife? I noticed the other day that she was looking rather sickly. Give her soothing drinks to keep her nerves cool. And green coconut milk, sir. Master, yes, a drink made of sugar candy is also good. M. Since last Sunday, I have been living at our house with my parents. Master, you have done well. It will be convenient for you to live at home. Since your parents live there, you won't have to worry so much about the family. While Sri Ramakrishna was talking, his mouth became dry. He said to him, like a child, I feel a dryness in my mouth. Do you all feel that way? And to Jogin, is your mouth also drying up? Jogin, no, perhaps it is due to the heat. Jogendra of Aryadaha was an intimate disciple of Sri Ramakrishna and later, after the passing away of the master, renounced the world. Sri Ramakrishna's clothes were still untidy. Some of the devotees smiled. Master, I look like a mother nursing her babies. All laughed. Well, my tongue is drying up. Shall I eat a pear or a jamrul? Baburam, let me get a jamrul for you. Master, you don't have to go out of this sun. You don't have to go out in the sun. M was still fanning the master. Master, you may stop now. You have been fanning a long time. I am not tired, sir. Master tenderly, no. M taught in a school in the neighborhood. He had a little recess at 1 o'clock, during which he visited Sri Ramakrishna. It was time for him to go back to the school. He saluted the master. Master to M, must you go now? A devotee. School is not over yet. He came here during recess. Master smiling. He is like a mother with 7 or 8 children. Day and night she is busy with her worldly duties, but now and then she makes time to serve her husband. And the school closed at 4 o'clock. He came back to Balram's house and found the master sitting in the drawing room. The devotees were arriving one by one. The younger Naren and Ram came. Narendra too was there and saluted the master and took a seat. The lady sent a plate of halwa for Sri Ramakrishna. Because of the sore in his throat, he could not eat any hard food. Master to Narendra, ah, this is nice stuff. Eat some, it is good. Eat some, laugh. Dusk was coming to Dusk was coming on. Sri Ramakrishna was about to go to the house of Girish, who had arranged a festival to celebrate the master's coming. The master came down from the second floor of Balram's house with M and a few other devotees. Near the gate he saw a beggar chanting the name of Rama and he stood still. He fell into a meditative mood and remained standing a few minutes. He said to M, he sings well. A devotee gave the beggar 4 pice. Sri Ramakrishna entered Bospada lane. Laughing, he said to M, "What are these people saying? There comes Paramahamsa's battalion. What these fools say, all laugh." Sri Ramakrishna entered Grish's house. The latter had invited a large number of devotees to join the festival. Many of them were present. They all stood up to receive the master, who, smiling, took his seat. The devotees sat around him. Among them were Greece, Mahimacharan, Ram, and Bhavnath, and also Baburam, Narendra, Jogin, the younger Naren, Chunni, Balram, and the other devotees who had accompanied the master from Balram's house. Master to Mahimacharan, I said to Greece about you. There is one very deep, you are only knee deep. Now you must help me check upon what I said. I want to see you to argue, but don't compromise or laugh. Greece and Mahimacharan started their discussion. Soon Ram said, "Let them stop, let us have some kirtan." Master to Ram, "No, no, this has a great deal of meaning. They are Englishmen. I want to hear what they say." Discussion about divine incarnation. Mahimacharan contended that all could become Krishna by means of sadhana. Greece said that Krishna was an incarnation of God. However much a man practiced sadhana, he could never be an incarnation. Mahima, do you know what I mean? Let me give an illustration. The bale tree can become a mango tree if only the obstructions are removed. It can be done by the practice of yoga. Girish, you may say whatever you like, but it cannot be done either by the practice of yoga or by anything else. Only a Krishna can become Krishna. If anybody has all the attributes of another person, Radha for instance, then he is none other than that person Radha herself. If I see in a person all the attributes of Krishna, then I shall conclude that I am seeing Krishna himself. Mahimacharan could not argue well. At last he had to accept Greece's views. Mahima to Greece. Yes, sir, both views are right. God has willed the path of knowledge. He has also willed the path of bhakti. Pointing to Sri Ramakrishna as he says, by different paths, people ultimately reach one and the same goal. Master aside to Mahima. You see, what I said was right, was not it? Mahima. Yes, sir. As you say, both paths are right. Master, pointing to Greece. Have not you noticed how deep his faith is? He forgot to eat his refreshments. Like a dog, he would have torn your throat if you had not accepted his view. But we have enjoyed the discussion. You two have known each other, and I myself have learnt many things. The musician arrived with his party and sat in the middle of the room. He was waiting for a sign from Sri Ramakrishna to begin the kirtan. The master gave his permission. Ram to the master, please tell them what to sing. Kirtan about Radha and Krishna. Master, what shall I suggest? After a little reflection, well, let them sing the prelude to the union of Radha and Krishna. The musician sang, "My Gora, my treasure, the jewel among men," weeps as he chants Sri Radha's name and rolls on the ground with fervent love. He chants her name again and again. The tears stream from his love-filled eyes. One more, once more he rolls upon the ground. As chanting her name he faints away. The hair on his body stands on end. His tongue can lisp but a single word. Says Basu, "Why is Gora so restless?" The Kirtan continued. Radha had met Krishna on the bank of the Jamuna under the Kadamba tree. Her companions describe her physical and mental condition. 100 times each hour in and out of the room she goes, restless, breathing hard. She looks towards the Kadamba grove. Is she afraid of the elders? Has she been possessed by a ghost? Filled with restlessness, she cannot keep her dress arranged. Her jewels have fallen off. She trembles every now and then. Alas, she is so young, a princess born and a wife beside. What is that she craves? We do not understand her mind, but we can guess her hand is reaching out to catch the moon. Humbly says Chandidas, Radha has fallen in Krishna's trap. The Kirtan went on. Radha's friends say to her, "Tell us, O Radha of comely face, tell us what is that ails you? Why has your mind wandered away? Why do you claw the earth in frenzy? Tell us why your golden skill has taken the ashy hue of cinders. From your body the scarlet cloth has dropped unheeded to the ground. Ah, your eyes are red with tears. Your lovely lotus face has withered. Tell us what it is that ails you, lest our hearts should break with grief." Radha says to her friends, "I long for the sight of Krishna's face." The musician sang again. Hearing Krishna's flute, Radha has gone mad. She says to her friends, "Who is the sorcerer that dwells in the Kadamba grove? His flute notes suddenly enter my ears and strike a chord in my heart. His flute notes suddenly enter my ears and strike a chord in my heart, piercing my very soul. They slay my dharna and drive me mad with restless mind and streaming eyes. Alas, I can scarcely breathe. How he plays his magic flute, whose music thrills my soul, because he is out of my sight. My heart expires. I cannot stay home because he is out of my sight. My heart expires. I cannot stay home. My soul yearns for him, racked with pain. It longs to see him once more. Says Uddhava Das, "But you will die, O Radha, when you behold him." The music continued. Radha's heart yearns for this vision of Krishna. She says to her friends, first I heard his magic flute from the Kadamba grove, and the next day the minstrel told me of him and thrilled my soul. Another day, O friend of my heart, you chanted his blessed name. Ah, the blessed name of Krishna, full of honeyed sweetness. The wise man too described to me his virtues without number. I am a weak and simple girl, and stern, alas, are my elders. My love for my beloved grows. How can I live any longer? After reflecting long, I find that I must die at last. Can you not tell me a way, O friend, by which I may meet my Krishna? As Sri Ramakrishna heard the line, "Ah, the blessed name of Krishna, full of honeyed sweetness," he could not remain seated any longer. He stood up in a state of unconsciousness and went into deep samadhi. The younger Naren stood at his right, regarding partial consciousness. The master repeated the name of Krishna in his melodious voice. Tears flowed down his cheeks. He sat down again. The musician continued his singing. Visakha, a friend of Radha, runs out and brings a portrait of Krishna. She holds it before Radha's eye. Radha says, I see the picture of him who beheld on the Jamuna's bank. Ever since then I have been in this plight. I see the picture of him whom I beheld on the Jamuna's bank. The name Visakha spoke is the name of him who is painted here. He who played on the flute is the beloved of my soul. His virtues the minstrels sing to me. He has bewitched my heart. It is none other than he. So saying, Radha falls in a swoon, restored to her senses by her friends. At once she says to them, show me him, O friends, whom I saw reflected in my soul. And they promise her that they will. Now Sri Ramakrishna with Narendra and other devotees began to sing the kirtan in a loud voice. They sang, behold the two brothers have come who weep while chanting Hari's name. They continued, see how all Nadia is shaking under the waves of Gauranga's love. Again Sri Ramakrishna went into samadhi after remaining consciousness of the outer world. He returned to his seat. Turning to M, he said, I don't remember which way I was facing before. Then he began to talk to the devotees about Hajra. Narendra to the master. Hajra has now become a good man. Master, you don't know. There are people who repeat Rama's name with their tongue but hide stones under their arms to throw at others. Narendra, I don't agree with you, sir. I asked him about the things people complain of. He denied them. Master, he is steadfast in his devotion. He practices japa a little, but he also behaves in a queer way. He doesn't pay the coachman his fare. Master, Narendra, that is not true, sir. He said he had paid it. Master, where did he get the money? Narendra, from Ramlal or someone else. Master, did you ask him all these things in detail? Once I prayed to the Divine Mother O mother, if Hajra is a hypocrite, then please remove him from here. Later on, I told him of my prayer. After a few days, he came to me and said, You see, I am still here. The master and the others laughed, but soon afterwards he left. Hajra's mother begged me through Ramlal to ask Hajra to come home. She was almost blind with weeping. I tried in various ways to persuade him to visit her. I said, Your mother is old, go and see her once. I could not make him go. Afterwards, the poor mother died, weeping for him. Narendra, this time he will go home. Master, yes, yes, he will go home. He is a rogue. He is a rascal. You don't understand him. You are a fool. Gopal said that Hajra stayed at Sinti a few days. People used to supply him with butter, rice, and other food. He had the impudence to tell them he could not swallow such coarse rice and bad butter. Ishan of Bhatpada accompanied him there. He ordered Ishan to carry water for him. That made the other Brahmins very angry. Narendra, I asked him about that too. He said that Ishan Babu had himself come forward with the water. Besides, many Brahmins of Bhatpada showed him respect. Master smiling. That was the result of his japa and austerity. You see, physical traits to a great extent influence character. Short stature and a body with dents here and there are not good traits. People with such traits take a long time to acquire spiritual knowledge. Bhavanath, let us stop talking about these things. Master, don't misunderstand me. To Narendra, you say you understand people. That is why I am telling you all this. Do you know how I look on people like Hazra? I know that just as God takes the form of holy man, so he also takes the form of saints and rogues. To Mahima Charan, what do you say? All are good? Mahima, yes sir, all are good. All are God. Grace to Master. What is Ekangi Prema? Master, it means one-sided love. For instance, the water does not seek the duck, but the duck loves water. There are other kinds of love. Sadharani, Samanjasa, and Samartha. In the first, which is ordinary love, the lover seeks his own happiness. He does not care whether the other person is happy or not. That was Chandravali's attitude towards Krishna. In the second, which is a compromise, both seek each other's happiness. This is a noble kind of love. But the third is the highest of all. Such a love says to his beloved, Be happy yourself, whatever may happen to me. Radha had this highest love. She was happy in Krishna's happiness. The gopis too had attained this exalted state. Do you know who the gopis were? Ramachandra was wandering in the forest where 60,000 rishis dwelt. They were very eager to see him. He cast a tender glance at them. According to a certain Purana, they were born later on as the gopis of Vrindavan. A devotee, sir, who may be called an antranga. Master, let me give an illustration. A nut, a nut mandir has pillars inside and outside. And Antaranga is like the inside pillars. Those who always live near the Guru are the Antarangas. To Mahimacharan, the Jnani wants neither a form of God nor his incarnation. While wandering in the forest, Ramachandra saw a number of rishis. They welcomed him to their asrama with great love and said to him, O Rama, today our life is blessed because we have seen you. But we know you as the son of Dasartha. Bhardvaja and other sages call you a divine incarnation, but that is not our view. We meditate on the indivisible Satchitananda. Rama was pleased with them and smiled. Master's exalted mood. Oh, what a state of mind I passed through. My mind would lose itself in the indivisible absolute. How many days I spent that way. I renounced bhakti and bhakta, devotion and devotees. I became inert. I could not feel the form of my own head. I was about to die. I thought of keeping Ramlal aunt near me. I ordered the removal of all pictures and portraits from my room. When I regained outer consciousness, when the mind climbed down to the ordinary level, I felt as if I were being suffocated like a drowning person. At last, I said to myself, if I can't bear people, then how shall I live? Then my mind was again directed to bhakti and bhakta. What happened to me? I kept asking people. Bholanath said to me, this state of mind has been described in the Mahabharata. How can a man live on coming down from the plane of Samadhi? Surely he requires devotion to God and the company of devotees. Otherwise, how will he keep his mind occupied? Mahima Charan to the Master. Sir, can a man return from the plane of Samadhi to the plane of the ordinary world? Mahima Charan to the Master. Master, in a low voice to Mahima, I shall tell you privately, you are the only one fit to hear it. Difference between a jiva and an incarnation. Kaur Singh also asked me that question. You see, there is a vast difference between the jiva and the Iswara. Kaur Singh, through worship and austerity, a jiva can at the utmost attain samadhi, but he cannot come down from that state. On the other hand, an incarnation of God can come down from samadhi. A jiva is like an officer of the king. He can go as far as the outer court of the seven-story place. Seven-story palace, but the king's son has access to all the seven floors. He can also go outside. Everybody says that no one can return from the plane of Samadhi. In In that case, how do you account for sages like Sankara and Ramanuja? They retain the ego of knowledge, Mahima. That is true indeed. Otherwise, how could they write books? Master, again, there are the instances of sages like Prahlada, Narada, and Hanuman. They too returned bhakti after attaining samadhi. Mahima, that is true, sir. Divine knowledge destroys egotism. Master, some people indulge in philosophical speculation and think much of themselves. Perhaps they have studied a little Vedanta, but a man cannot be egotistic if he has true knowledge. In other words, in Samadhi, man becomes one with God and gets rid of his egotism. True knowledge is impossible without Samadhi. In Samadhi, man becomes one with God. Then he can have no egotism. Do you know what it is like? Just at noon, the sun is directly overhead. If you look around, then you do not see your shadow. Likewise, you will not find the shadow of ego after attaining knowledge, samadhi. The ego after God, vision. But if you see in anyone a trace of I consciousness after the attainment of true knowledge, then know that it is either the ego of knowledge or the ego of devotion or the servant ego. It is not the ego of ignorance. Again, jnana and bhakti are twin paths. Whichever you follow, it is God that you will ultimately reach. The Jnani looks on God in one way and the Bhakta looks on him in another way. The God of the Jnani is full of brilliance and the God of the Bhakta full of sweetness. Bhavnath was seated near the master listening to these words. Bhavnath to the master. Sir, I have a question to ask. I don't I do not quite understand the Chandi. It is written there that the divine mother killed all beings. What does that mean, master? This is all her Leela, her sportive pleasure. That question used to bother me too. Later I found out that all is Maya. Both creation and destruction are God's Maya. Greece conducted Sri Ramakrishna and the devotees to the roof where the meal was served. There was a bright moon in the sky. The devotees took their seats. The master occupied a seat in front of them. All were in a joyous mood. Sri Ramakrishna was beside himself with joy at the sight of Narendra. The beloved disciple sat in the front row. Every now and then the master asked how he was getting along. He had hardly finished half his meal when he came to Narendra with some watermelon sarbat and curd from his own plate. Tenderly he said to the disciple, please eat this. Then he went back to his own plate, place. Saturday, May 9, 1885. It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Sri Ramakrishna sat in Balram's drawing room in a happy mood. Many devotees were present. Narendra M. Bhavnath, Purna, Paltu, the younger Naren, Greece, Ram, Vinod, Divya and others sat around him. Balram was not there. He had gone to the Munger for a change of air. His eldest daughter had invited Sri Ramakrishna and the devotees and celebrated the occasion with a feast. The master was resting after the meal. Again and again the master asked him, Am I liberal-minded? Tell me. Bhavna, smiling. Why do you ask him? He will only keep quiet. A beggar entered the room. He wanted to sing. The devotees listened to a song or two. Narendra liked his singing and asked him to sing more. Master, stop, stop. We don't want any more song. Where is the money? To Narendra, you may order the music, but who will pay? A devotee smiling, Sir, the beggar may think you are an Amir, a wealthy aristocrat, the way you are leaning against that big pillow. All laugh. Master smiling, he may also think I am ill. The conversation drifted to Hajra and his egotism. For some reason he had to go away from Dakshineshwar. Narendra Hajra now admits he was egotistic. Master, don't believe him. He says so in order to come back to Dakshineshwar, to the devotees. Narendra always insists that Hajra is a grand person. Narendra, even now I say so. Master, why? You have heard so much about him and still you think so. Narendra, he has slight defects but many virtues. Hajra's selfishness. Master, I admit that he has devotion to his ideal. He said to me, You don't care for me now, but later you will be seeking my company. A Goswami came from Srirampur. He was a descendant of Advaita Goswami. He intended to spend a night or two at the temple garden. He asked him very cordially to stay. Do you know what Hazra said to me? He said, Send him to the temple officer. What was in his mind was that the Goswami might ask for milk or food and that he might have to give him some from his own share. I said to Hazra, Now you rogue, even I prostrate myself before him because he is a Goswami, and you, after leading a worldly life and indulging a great deal in women and gold, have so much pride because of a little japa. Are not you ashamed of yourself? One realizes God through sattva, rajas, and tamas take one away from him. The scriptures describe sattva as white, rajas as red, and tamas as black. Once I asked Hazra, Tell me what you think of the people that come here. How much sattva does each one possess? He said, Narendra has 100% and I have 110%. What about me? I asked, and he said, You still have a trace of pink. You have only 75%. I should say, all laugh. Hajra used to practice japa at Dakshineshwar while telling his beads. He would also try to do a little brokerage business. He has a debt of few thousand rupees which he must clear up. About the Brahmin cooks of the temple, he remarked, Do you think I talk with people of that sort? The truth is that you cannot attain God if you have even a trace of desire. Subtle is the way of dharma. If you if you are trying to thread a needle, you will not succeed if the thread has even a slight fiber sticking out. There are people who perform japa for 30 years and still do not attain any result. Why? A A gangrenous sore requires very drastic treatment. Ordinary medicine won't cure it. God's grace. No matter how much samadhi you practice, you will not realize the goal as long as you have desire. But this also is true that one can one can realize the goal in a moment through the grace of God, through His kindness. Take the case of a room that has been dark 1,000 years. If somebody suddenly brings a lamp into it, the room is lighted in an instant. Suppose a poor man's son has fallen into the good grace of a rich person. He marries his daughter immediately. He gets an equipage, clothes, furniture, a house, and other things. A devotee, sir, how does one receive God's grace? Master, God has the nature of a child. A child is sitting with gems in the skirt of his clothes. Many a person passes by him along the road. Many of them pray to him for gems, but he hides the gems with his hands and says, turning away his face, no, I will not give any away. But another man comes along, he doesn't ask for the gems, and yet the child runs after him and offers him the gems, begging him to accept them. One cannot realize God without renunciation. Who will accept my words? I have been seeking a companion, a sympathetic soul who will understand my feelings. When I see a great devotee, I say to myself, perhaps he will accept my ideal, but later on I find that he behaves in a different way. A ghost sought a companion. One becomes a ghost if one dies from an accident on a Saturday or a Tuesday. So, whenever the ghost found someone who seemed to be dying from an accident or either of these days, he would run to him. He would say to himself that at last he had found his companion. But no sooner would he run to the man than he would see the man getting up. The man perhaps had fallen from a roof and after a few moments regained consciousness. Once Mathur Babu was in an ecstatic mood. He behaved like a drunkard and could not look after his work. At this all said, who will look after his estate if he behaves like that? Certainly the young priest has cast a spell upon him. During one of Narendra's early visits, I touched his chest and he became unconscious. Regaining consciousness, he wept and said, oh, why did you do that to me? I have a father, I have a mother. This I and mine spring from ignorance, unreality of all worldly relationships. A guru said to his disciple, the world is illusory, come away with me. But revered sir, said the disciple, my people at home, my father, my mother, my wife love me so much. How can I give them up? The Guru said, no doubt you now have this feeling of I and mine and say that they love you, but this is all an illusion of your mind. I shall teach you a trick and you will know whether they love you truly or not. Saying this, the teacher gave the disciple a pill and said to him, swallow this at home. You will appear to be a corpse, but you will not lose consciousness. You will see everything and hear everything. Then I shall come to your house and gradually you will regain your normal state. The disciple followed the teacher's instructions and lay on his bed like a dead person. The house was filled with loud wailing. His mother, his wife, and The others lay on the ground weeping bitterly. Just then a Brahmin with entered the house and said to them, "What is the matter with you?" "This boy is dead," they replied. The Brahmin felt his pulse and said, "How is that?" "No, he is not dead. I have a medicine for him that will cure him completely." The joy of the relatives was unbounded. It seemed to them that heaven itself had come down into their house. "But," said the Brahman, "I must tell you something else. Another person must take some of this medicine first, and then the boy must swallow the rest. But the other person will die. I see he has so many dear relatives here. One of them will certainly agree to the to take the medicine. I see his wife and mother crying bitterly. Surely they will not hesitate to take it." At once the weeping stopped and all sat quiet. The mother said, "Well, this is a big family. Suppose I die, then who will look after the family?" She fell into a reflective mood. The wife, who had been crying a minute before and bemoaning her ill luck, said, "Well, he has gone the way of mortals. I have these 2 or 3 young children. Who will look after them if I die?" The disciple saw everything and heard everything. He stood up at once and said to the teacher, "Let us go." "Revered sir, I will follow you." All laughed. Another disciple said to his teacher, "Revered sir, my wife takes great care of me. It is for her sake that I cannot give up the world." The disciple practiced Hatha Yoga. The teacher taught him to a trick to test his wife's love. One day there was a great wailing in his house. The neighbors came running and saw the Hatha Yogi seated in a posture, his limbs paralyzed and distorted. They thought he was dead. His wife fell on the ground weeping piteously. "Oh, what has befallen me? How have you provided for our future? Oh, friends, I never dreamed I should meet such a fate." Bitterly, when she heard the sound of the axe, she ran to the door. "What are you doing, friends?" she asked, still weeping. The neighbor said, "We can't take the body out, so we are chopping away the door frame." "Please," said the wife, "don't do any such thing. I am a widow now. I have no one to look after me. I have to bring up these young children. If you destroy this door, I shall not be able to replace it. Friends, death is inevitable for all, and my husband cannot be called back to life. You had better cut his limbs." The Hatha Yogi at once stood up. The effect of the medicine had worn off. He said to his wife, "You evil one, you want to cut off my hands and feet, do you?" So saying, he renounced home and followed his teacher. All laugh. Many women make a shadow of grief, knowing beforehand that they will have to weep. They first take off their nose rings and other ornaments, put them securely in a box, and lock it. Then they fall on the ground and weep. "Oh, friends, what has befallen us?" Narendra's skepticism. "Narendra, how can I believe without proof that God incarnates himself as a man. Greece. Faith alone is sufficient. What is the proof that these objects exist here? Faith alone is the proof. A devotee. Have philosophers been able to prove that the external world exists outside us, but they say we have an irresistible belief in it? Grace to Narendra. You would not believe even if God appeared before you. God himself might say that he was God born as a man, but perhaps you would say that he was a liar and a cheat. The conversation turned to the immortality of the gods. Narendra, what is the proof of their immortality? Greece, you would not believe it even if the gods appeared before you. Narendra, that the immortals existed in the past requires proof. And whispered something to Paltu. Paltu smiling to Narendra. What need is there for the immortals to be without beginning? To be immortal, one need only be without end. Master smiling, Narendra is the son of a liar, but Paltu of a deputy magistrate. All laughed, all kept silent while Jobin, smiling, he, meaning the master, does not accept Narendra's words anymore. Master smiling, one day I remarked that the chatak bird does not drink any water except that which falls from the sky. Narendra said, the Chatak drinks ordinary water as well. Then I said to the Divine Mother, then are my words untrue? I was greatly worried about it. Another day later on, Narendra was here. Several birds were flying about in the room. He exclaimed, there, what is there? I asked. He said, there is your chatak. I found that I found they were only bats. Since that day, I don't accept what he says or laugh. At Jadoo Malik's garden house, Narendra said to me, the forms of God that you see are the fiction of your mind. I was amazed and said to him, but they speak too. Narendra answered, yes, one may think so. I went to the temple and wept before the mother. Oh mother, I said, what is this? There is this all false. How could Narendra see that? Instantly I had a revelation. I saw consciousness, indivisible consciousness, and a divine being formed of that consciousness. The divine form said to me, if your words are untrue, how is that they tally with the facts? Thereupon I said to Narendra, you rogue, you created unbelief in my mind. Don't come here anymore. The discussion continued. Narendra was arguing. He was then slightly over 22 years of age. Narendra to Greece, M and others. How am I to believe in the words of scripture? The Mahanirvana Tantra says in one place that unless a man attains the knowledge of Dharma, he goes to hell. And the same book says in another place that there is no salvation without the worship of Parvati, the Divine Mother. Manu writes about himself in the Manusmritaha, Manu Samhita. Moses describes his own death in Pentateuch. The Sankhya philosophy says that God does not exist because there is no proof of his existence. Again, the same philosophy says that one must accept the Vedas and that they are eternal. But I don't see that these are not true. I simply don't understand them. Please explain them to me. People have explained the scriptures according to their fancy. Which explanation shall we accept? While light coming through a red medium appears red, through a green medium green. A devotee. The Gita contains the words of God. Master, yes, the Gita is the essence of all scriptures. A sannyasi may or may not keep up with him another book, but he always carries a pocket Gita. A devotee. The Gita contains the words of Krishna. Narendra, yes, Krishna or any fellow for that matter. Sri Ramakrishna was amazed at these words of Narendra. Master, this is a fine discussion. There are two interpretations of the scripture, the literal and the real. One should accept the real meaning alone, what agrees with the words of God. There is a vast difference between the words written in a letter and the direct words of its writer. The scriptures are like the words of letter. The words of God are direct words. I do not accept anything unless it agrees with the direct words of the Divine Mother. The conversation again turned to divine incarnation. Narendra, it is enough to have faith in God. I do not care about what He is doing or what He hangs around. Infinite is the universe, infinite are the incarnation. As Sri Ramakrishna heard the words infinite is the universe, infinite are the incarnations, he said with folded hands, ah, and whispered something into Bhavanath. Bhavanath and says, as long as I have not seen the elephant, how can I know whether it can pass through the eye of a needle? I do not know God. I do not I do not know God. How can I understand through reason whether or not he can incarnate himself as man? Master, everything is possible for God. It is He who casts the spell. The magician swallows the knife and takes it out again. He swallows stones and bricks. Master, everything is possible for God. It is He who casts the spell. The magician swallows the knife and takes it out again. He swallows stones and bricks. A devotee, the Brahmos say that a man should perform his worldly duties. He must not renounce them. Grace, yes, I saw something like that in their paper, the Sulbha Samachar. But a man cannot even finish all the works that are necessary for him in order to know God, and still he speaks of worldly duties. Sri Ramakrishna smiled a little, looked at Anne and made a sign with his eyes as if to say, what he says is right. Anne understood that this question of performing duties was an extremely difficult one. Purna arrived. Master, who told you about our being here? Purna, Sarda, Master to the woman devotees, give him some refreshments. I conclude this video at this stage. Thank you for watching the video. Next video number 45 will start with Narendra's music. Thank you. Namaste.